I get asked a lot about whether I get barley belly or not, and I normally answer, oh, not usually or very rarely, but I got something the other day and I thought this is a pretty good time to talk about barley belly. I'm over here in Bris today. It's pretty warm. This morning it was slightly cooler than normal. I felt a little bit cool when I was riding on the motorbike with a short sleeve shirt on, but now it's heated right up and it's as dry as anything. Looks like the crops that they've got in are now like things like pumpkins and so forth, rather than rice. So we need to talk about barley belly because it's something which still affects me slightly. Nowhere near as much as it probably did in the past, but it's still there. It's one of these things, and I guess we need to talk about really what it is, how it affects people, how to treat it, what are some really good techniques to try and prevent it. So let's get stuck in and find out more about barley belly. One of the problems with the terminology barley belly is that it's a catch-all, really. It's not one disease or infection. It's a whole cluster of things that go wrong when you're in a place like Indonesia or in other places where the conditions are just slightly different to what they might be in your home country. Generally, it's due to sanitary type thing, but it can be contaminated food and water, and most often it's like a bacterial infection of some sort, but it can be viral as well. And you can also get parasites as well, which can be pretty nasty. I mean, you can get all sorts of stuff here, and it's actually quite difficult to know which one you've got most of the time, and determining exactly what you've got might be a good sort of first step in trying to treat what you've got as well. The funny thing is that most locals have adapted to the bugs that are out there in Indonesia, so they don't really get affected as much by some of these things as foreigners. And you'll find that you might get really sick, and the person who you're with, like my wife for example, doesn't get sick at all. And that's a really common occurrence for me and Susan. I'll sometimes get really sick and she just won't get sick at all. And we've eaten the same things. I've actually just stopped in here at Warung Charing, which is in Bris. It's a beautiful little spot. I come down here every now and then. I'm having a Coke today, but sometimes I'll have a beer or a little bite to eat or whatever, just depending on what I'm doing for the day. The other thing about barley belly is that severity is hugely variable. Some people get just a slight stomach rumble, and some people come down with a full-blown food poisoning type situation where they've got fevers and headaches and they're vomiting and they've got diarrhea and so forth. So it's really sort of variable, and that's because people are affected differently and there are different bugs at play. So what are the symptoms that most people get when they get barley belly? Well, basically they get diarrhea. I mean, we're going to go down this path, aren't we? Well, I mean, we have to. Some people vomit. That's very rarely happened to me. It's probably happened to me, I think, 3 times here in Indonesia, maybe 4 times. It probably happened maybe even more than 4 times in my sort of 15 years here. Those particular instances have been very severe cases. But I've had upset stomachs a lot here, like a lot. So all of these things that I'm going through, these symptoms, are not your typical sort of manifestations. Sometimes you'll get something quite mild. So for example, you might get a mild fever, you might get a bit of fatigue. The diarrhea is actually the main one. Once you start getting that, you know something's not quite right. Bloating, loss of appetite. I mean, normally if you get a really bad case, you're not going to want to eat, like for days. You're going to be vomiting, you're going to have the fever, you're going to be diarrhea, and there's not going to be much coming out except liquid. And that can go on for days, but it can go on for weeks. If you don't get treated properly, it can be quite severe, quite dangerous, and especially when you take into account things like dehydration and the imbalance of your electrolytes and that sort of thing, that can really be quite dangerous. And that's why when you hear of these sorts of outbreaks in third world countries such as like dysentery and so forth, a lot of people are dying through fluid loss and not getting that sort of replacement fluid. So it's really important that you keep hydrated when you have these bouts. Contaminated food and drink is the main sort of way you're going to get it, unless it's some sort of like a virus where you might get it from a door handle, but generally it's going to be from contaminated food and drink. And we'll go through the water part of it first, because this is a really interesting one. Of course you don't drink the tap water here, But for example, I'll brush my teeth with normal tap water quite often. And if you're in the shower, sometimes you'll get tap water in your mouth, but you don't swallow it. And for me, that's generally been okay for my time here. But if you're a little bit sensitive, I'd even avoid that. The other thing about water is that it can get into your food through a different source. For example, if you have a piece of fruit and someone washes it, like an apple that's got a skin on it, and someone washes it under a tap and then gives it to you and then you consume it, that could be problematic. If you have a salad and it's being washed under a tap, that could be a problem. Normally it doesn't happen like that. In most places that you eat, they will be using bottled water to wash these sorts of things, but not always. And you don't know who it is that's preparing your food. So that's something to be careful about. I don't get careful about salad. I used to, but it's not something I worry about these days, and I still don't get done very much. But if you wanted to be ultra careful, you'd be worried about salads. I'm not. Another way you can get done is from ice, from tap water. Now, I know that people are a bit paranoid with ice here in Bali. I am not. I've never been paranoid about it. I think that there might have been once upon a time when ice was problematic, but it's not anymore. Even a dude who's like got big blocks of ice that he's chopping off, and you don't ever see, you just almost never see that anymore. Even that I'm not too worried about, because mostly they're going to be getting it from clean water, because locals get sick from dirty water as well. Like when they have water at their house, they're not drinking tap water. They're drinking water which is either the same as that you and I drink from those aqua gallon things, those big 19 litre ones, or they'll be doing a thing called an isi ulang, which is like they'll take their bottle to a place that can treat the water with UV or what have you, filters and so forth, that takes all the pathogens out of it. So the ice thing's really not a big deal, but it technically is one way that you could get sick, but I just don't think it's a big deal anymore. I do not worry about ice at all when it comes to barley belly. The other one is water used in cooking, and I'm sort of thinking about, like, if you have noodles which have been boiled and that water is not fresh water, how might that affect you? But I mean, if the water gets boiled first anyway, shouldn't that be killing off all the pathogens? I don't know, but for example, if I cook noodles for myself at home, instant noodles, I don't use water from the tap. I'll use, clean water, but I'm not even sure if it's that big a deal if you're boiling the water first. But whatever the case, that is perhaps one of the ways that you could get sick, especially if someone used water from a tap, they didn't quite boil it properly, it might have got to 80 degrees, so it's quite hot, but it didn't kill off all the pathogens, and then you drank the soup. I mean, that could happen. I just think that's a less likely method as well. But I mean, they're the sorts of things I'm thinking about when it comes to what sort of liquids that you might get barley belly from. But of course, the main one is food. And the first thing that most people will find out is that because there's a lot of spicy food here, the spicy food can really affect your digestive system, and it can really upset that quite quickly if you're not really used to spicy food. So be careful of that in the first instance. There's not really barley belly, but it can certainly have a negative effect on your digestion. But then we get into things like food hygiene, food handling, how the food's been prepared, those sorts of things. So the most obvious one is raw or undercooked food. So a piece of chicken that hasn't been cooked properly. I mean, that can happen anywhere in the world, but maybe that's some way of getting sick here. Food that's been sitting in the heat, so maybe something was cooked and then it was sat there all day and then you ate it, that could be a problem. I mean, I know that that's sort of how a lot of food in Indonesia is served anyway. Like if you go to a Masakan Padang restaurant, that food might have been cooked in the morning or the day before, and it's been sitting there the whole time, and it can include things like chicken, which is notorious for like making you sick if it's been sitting out for too long. And in a place like Australia or Europe, those sorts of food handling techniques would be illegal, but they happen here, and I've yet to get sick from those things so far, and the locals don't get sick from it either, much. So I'm not sure how that works here, whether the food being coated in lots of chili might impact that or what. But it seems to be that they can get away with it here a little bit as well. But it's not just that either, because the poor food handling thing may not be actually at the eatery that you're at. So for example, you might go to a 5-star restaurant who has a supplier who's a little bit dodgy in the way that they handle the ingredients coming to the restaurant. They might have a driver who broke down on the side of the road or went off to go and have his lunch in a refrigerated van but turned the van off and the refrigeration went off or something. You can't know all of those supply chain things, and there's so many things that can go wrong when it comes to meat especially, that's been sat out for too long, and we just can't have visibility over that. Now, one of the ways that most people sort of determine how they're going to sort of stay away from barley belly is go to the expensive places, go to the Western places, one with a Western menu, and it's completely the wrong approach. The reason it's the wrong approach is because the style of food does not determine whether it's clean, hygienic, whether the food's been handled properly. The way that I find is the best method is to find a local place where there's huge turnover. If you've got heaps of locals going there and the food's turning over and they're cooking fresh batches, or they might cook your meal fresh for you, you're much less likely to get sick. Number one, because the turnover's a lot. Number two, because the locals aren't getting sick there because they really love it. And that's sort of a better way to sort of handle it in my view. I actually find I remember one time I got really sick. It was from a fruit salad at a hostel in Jakarta. You know, it was as simple as that. It might have been something as simple as that fruit salad had been chopped up on a board, that chicken had been chopped up on, raw chicken had been chopped up on the night before. Like, it probably was something like that. That's actually another point, is that cross-contamination thing is not really well understood here. I mean, I know that in many countries around the world there are really strict food handling procedures. You know, you must have a tap within 5 metres of the serving area. You must use separate chopping boards, separate knives for cutting meat and fruit and veg, and you must wipe down this and that. Those rules don't really exist here, so things are much more left to an individual's interpretation of how things should be done, and that can probably get people into problems as well. I guess the point of all of that is that it's almost impossible to determine how you actually get it. You can have an idea that I ate that food and it made me sick, but the real reason behind it, you're never going to know. Was it poor food handling? Was it the food was off? Did the person themselves not wash their hands after they came out of the toilet and you got some E. coli infection? It's difficult to know. I have a funny feeling you don't get it as much these days as you used to. That's just my feeling. But that's sort of maybe because I don't get it as much as I used to, maybe. Before we go over prevention, let's just talk about a few of the myths that I always hear come up that we have to mention them, I guess. The first one is obviously the ice thing. Getting barley belly from ice is less likely than almost any other method. You're almost never going to come across ice, which is going to give you barley belly. I mean, you might have to be really remote where someone's got a freezer and is trying to save money by using tap water. I mean, it just doesn't make sense at all. Like, one of those big gallons, 19 litre gallons of water, that costs 20,000 rupiah. They're not going to try and save money on ice by using tap water and potentially poisoning people. Not going to happen. The next big one is warungs. A lot of people really are fearful of going to a warung, even though they're really curious. I've had so many people on the channel over the past couple of years saying, I really would love to try these warungs, but I'm worried I'm going to get sick. And it's I don't know what it is that makes us think we'll get sick, but it's a myth. The warung itself is not what's going to get you sick. It's a place that's probably not so busy, or the turnover's not so great. The food's old, or their food handling's poor. And that happens across all sorts of different places, whether it be a warung or a Western restaurant or a really expensive restaurant. So if I go to a restaurant that's quite expensive and doesn't have many customers in it, I'm sort of a bit worried at that stage. Whereas if I go to a warung that has heaps of people there, I've got no fear at all, like at all. For me, the same thing goes for those food carts or people just sitting on the side of the road selling stuff. You get a pretty good feel whether a particular food cart or a seller sitting on the side of the road's fairly hygienic. I mean, you can never really know, as we've sort of spoken about already, but like the other night I got sticks of satay babi from a seller just sitting on the side of the road, and all the fresh satay that's not yet cooked is sitting in a bowl on the side of the road and might have been sitting out there for a while. I have no idea how long it was sitting out there, but there were plenty of other customers coming through and eating that food. So I had a sort of a feeling that it should be okay. than it was. I had no problems. But what happens in the kitchens of these big resorts and hotels and so forth, we've got no idea. So you can't even make a judgment on those except to say, are they busy or not? And the last myth is about hand sanitizer, you know, alcoholic wet wipes, that sort of stuff. Most of the time when you get sick here, it's not because of, you know, hand to mouth type stuff. It's very rarely that. I mean, it's not a bad sort of hygiene thing to sort of have anyway, have your hands clean, but it's not the main reason you're going to get sick here. So if you don't do that, or if you bite your fingernails, there's all dirt under them. Well, I wouldn't do that, but if you did, well, it's probably not that big a deal. You're probably more likely to get sick from eating a dodgy kebab or a dodgy, I don't know, nasi goreng or something like that than you are from biting your dirty fingernails. Okay, so let's talk about the things you can do to help you prevent or make the symptoms of these things not so bad. These are some pretty decent techniques that I sort of think about a little bit. First one is probiotics. You can do that with tablets before you come on a trip to Bali. If you live here, you can take those. You can do things like drink Yakult. Like I drink Yakult every now and then. They have this low sugar one, and there's a lady that comes around that delivers it. A Yakult lady, with the red uniform on the back of a motorbike. She's got all these really cold ice boxes on the back where she stores that Yakult so it doesn't, so the cultures don't die. You could also do things like eating fermented food, keep your gut health good, so things like kombucha or kimchi, or if you're doing Indonesian food, you'd be thinking about things like peyem, which is like a West Java thing, or tape, which is another fermented thing as well. Those sorts of things are great for gut health, and that really can give you a bit of strength before you get over to Bali and start challenging it with all this bacteria and viruses and parasites and that sort of stuff. I might just go over to this little place here. I've actually never been into it. I know it's been here for a long time now. I usually go to another place over here, which is called Warung Umago, but that's mainly because this one was built afterwards. So I just never got around to it. I always just kept going back to the same one. But I'll go over here today, have a bit of a look at it, have a coffee over there. So that's the view out here. So when I first sort of started coming around here, this was all rice field. And over the past couple of years, it's sort of been built out a little bit. And I'm guessing in the future that will get built out, even though it's the green zone and not supposed to be. The government really wants to crack down on that, but they haven't really done a great job because there are buildings still sort of appearing around here, including this place I'm going to. All right, this is the place. Pretty nice outlook, isn't it? Look at that. Hello. Hello. Good, how are you? All right, where are we going to sit? Maybe sit here. I think I spotted my spot, which is going to be right there in the grass, on this table here. This looks pretty cool, eh? Nice little spot. So that other warung I was at is just over there, I think. Hang on, where would it be? About there, yeah. Just there, just across the field. I'm not even sure what this place is called because it seems to have multiple signs out the front. One of them says Izakaya, the other one says Sanur Art Hub or something like that. So I'm not really sure what to call it, but let's call it Izakaya. It's not really like an izakaya in Japan at all. Like it's not at all like an izakaya. There's actually a really nice garden area out the back there as well, and then a little indoor area, but it's not really indoor. Like sort of cover on it, so if it rained, you'd be okay. Very beautiful breeze as well, so it's so cool. And I think I'm the only customer here at the moment, which is odd. All right, so let's talk about treatment just a little bit. What happens if you get barley belly? Well, the first thing that you've got to do is make sure you are hydrated. You remember in the old days, you might get Lucozade, one of those things where you have like electrolytes in there as well. So it's not just that you fill up with water. You've got to keep those salts and everything balanced in your body. Oh, I can see Gunung Agung at the moment, just there. You might not be able to see it on the camera, but I certainly can. It's looking absolutely amazing just there, just peeking above the clouds. So hydration is everything. It's one of the things that the World Health Organization talks about, is that if there's an outbreak of dysentery or what have you, they really recommend people get a simple mixture of salt and sugar to get those electrolytes going back into their body. And I think it's the ratio is 1 tablespoon of salt to 6 tablespoons of sugar in 1 litre of water. And that's sort of like a little home remedy you can do. But otherwise you can do things like over here, like Pocari Sweat is a good one. Another one you can get at most pharmacies here is called Oralit. It's spelled like Oralite. And that's just one of those things where you can, like a powder that you mix in with water, and it gives you sort of a bit more of a balanced rehydration rather than just putting water into you all the time, which can be quite dangerous if all your electrolytes are all out of balance. Often what I'll do, I'll have like a 1.5 litre Pocari Sweat by my bed, and then I'll also have as much of that coconut water as I can get, you know, the hydro cocoa. That doesn't really give you the salt, but I love it anyway when I'm feeling sick, and I'll just be chugging that back until I can get back on an even keel. If I'm feeling like I want to eat food, I'll usually eat something quite plain, but it doesn't take me long just to get back into the normal food again. Like sometimes I do punish myself a little bit and go and get a nasi goreng when I should be eating like plain rice or plain bananas and that sort of stuff. But it just depends on how you feel and how you can tolerate food. Often I'll just go without food totally for like a week. Like that has happened to me before. I just can't eat. And that's not great for you either, but it's sort of your body saying, hey, I can't handle food at the moment. There we go, there's my coffee, there's my little cappuccino. Let's see how that is. Good temperature.
Mantap.
Good one. Now the good coffee out here in the rice fields. I like Umago as well, but that's also a very good one. So both of these places, definitely worth a visit if you're in Sanur, especially in the afternoon. Like right now, this is all in shade and the breeze is blowing. It's quite pleasant. I'm surprised there aren't more people out here having a beer or a coffee or whatever. It's, I reckon, a better place than down at the beach. Well, it's just personal opinion, but I think it is. Okay, getting back to treatment. Needless to say, stay off the booze while you're, feeling a bit dodgy. Don't be doing like, I don't know, milkshakes and stuff, like abuse your body like that. Yeah, just basic things, just take it easy. I think some people like to do Imodium. I mean, I don't. I just like to get that bug out of me. But if you have to travel, the Imodium can help a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I'd be going to the doctor before I went and started on Imodium because I think it can be counterproductive. And then the big one is to see a doctor. Now, I know that seeing a doctor is a bit of a pain for most people, but if you're staying in a pretty good hotel, the reception can usually call a doctor for you for them to come to your room and treat you in your room. They might even do some tests in the room and then take them back and come back again and tell you the results or whatever they need to do. Stool test if you need one of those, which will be a nightmare for me, but yeah, okay. Do what you're going to do. And those people are generally covered under your health insurance or your travel insurance or whatever it is. Your travel insurance will cover that. If you're not covered in travel insurance, it's probably not that big a deal either because it's probably only a couple of $100 depending on who you get, but get a quote first. It's not going to be that expensive to get a person to come over and diagnose you, give you the right medicines and that sort of thing. And in some scenarios, what I've heard people are doing is even in their hotel room is getting an IV drip in their hotel room to get their hydration going again. So if you've become quite dehydrated because you've had so much diarrhea and vomiting, an IV drip in your room is what people are doing. Now, I don't know if that's if that's the recommended thing to do, but I know it's happening. I thought you'd have to go to a clinic for that, but I don't know. People who are sort of more expert at these things probably can sort of chime in on that one. But having said that, I see all the young ones over at Canggu getting IV drips just to get vitamins into them or something these days. I saw a photo of someone at a beach club drinking with an IV drip in, which I thought was pretty weird. And I guess that's the bottom line, isn't it? If you're at all unsure if after 24 hours you're not really improving too much and you're finding it hard to keep food down, you probably should see a doctor. Now, that's really good advice from me, but I don't take my own advice because I've never gone to a doctor regarding food poisoning in the past, and I've had it very, very badly in the past. Like I've been sick for weeks in the past and not gotten better. I should have seen a doctor, but I didn't. And yeah, that's just maybe male stubbornness or something like that. I think a lot of people are like that, but the recommendation is go and see a doctor, especially in Indonesia, because they know all about it. And in Bali, they're treating people like this all the time. One of the things that people often ask me is, have I adapted to it? And I think I have somewhat. Like, as I said, I was sick a couple of days ago. Like, I had the worst stomach cramps that you can believe from eating something. I don't know what it was. I'd eaten a couple of things which I often eat here, and maybe something just went wrong on one of the ingredients, like on one of the things I had. I don't know. Susan didn't get sick, she never does. Like, and when I say that, I think I've seen her sick from food poisoning, barley belly type thing once, and that was in Sri Lanka, and we were both extremely ill in Sri Lanka. Aside from that, she never gets sick. I get sick often, but usually quite mild. Something that's gone in sort of less than 24 hours, almost never vomiting. Like, I've probably vomited from food poisoning maybe 4 or 5 times in my time here in Indonesia. I don't generally get sick in other countries. I've travelled pretty extensively around India and Thailand and Laos, Cambodia. You know, I just don't get sick in those places for some reason, but here I do. And those really severe ones are quite rare. I'm also finding that it's sort of less frequent and less severe now than it used to be. So I guess you probably do adapt in some ways. I think people who were born here, brought up with those microorganisms in their digestive tract and that sort of stuff are fine. People like us weak foreigners, probably not so fine, but you do adapt a little bit. Just one point on that though, is that if you are older and you're a local, even though you were immune for most of your life, it can still bring you down and kill you. I don't know how many people get killed by these sorts of things here in Indonesia, but I suspect a lot of older people get knocked off by bouts of food poisoning here when their immune system is not as strong as it once used to be. Just a guess. So if you are a little bit older, be a little bit more cautious than I probably am, and get straight to the doctor if you have any issues, for sure, if you're older. The other things that you probably need to be aware of that you can get here quite commonly that may start off with similar symptoms and really do need medical attention. So there's things like Giardia. That's the one where it's in the water. If you get something like that, it's a parasite, you really need to be treated. Dengue can have abdominal symptoms. Really, I mean, I had that when I had dengue. It felt like food poisoning for me. It was awful, but it was dengue. So be careful of that as well, because if you get some other classic symptoms that are associated with dengue, like the joints aching, you no longer got food poisoning, now you've got dengue fever and it's a lot more serious. Typhoid you can get here, or I think they might be calling it typhus here. But the other thing about typhus is that they often just call everything typhus, so I'm not even sure if it's the correct diagnosis. But anyway, typhoid is another one. And basically, if something's feeling a little bit more serious or you're really sick, you've got to see a doctor, get it looked at. That's the bottom line, isn't it? So that's my comprehensive guide to barley belly here in wonderful Sanur. I really hope you don't get it when you're here, and it's something which I hope that you can put out of your mind a little bit. I think sometimes if you overthink it, it can spoil your holiday a little bit. For me, I throw caution to the wind and occasionally get done, but not very often. And most of you will probably be okay as well. Thanks for coming along for the ride today, and thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to keep up to date with all things Sanur and the rest of Indonesia. I'll catch you next time, and sampai jumpa.